Today we'll discuss about the components of pond ecosystem. Pond ecosystem is a complex web of interacting biotic and abiotic components. Biotic components includes producers like plants, green plants and algae, and it also includes the consumers like fish, zooplanktons and decomposers like bacteria and fungi. These biotic components include the various life forms that inhabit in a pond ecosystem, and its abiotic components include the physical conditions and chemical characteristics like water, sunlight, nutrients, and temperature. This pond ecosystem is a functional complex of mutually depending biotic and abiotic components. So these biotic and abiotic components, they regularly interact with each other and maintain a balanced environment. Thus, in a pond ecosystem, the biotic components includes the various producers. They are also known as autotrophs, consumers, and decomposers. The consumers are otherwise called as heterotrophs, and decomposers are also known as reducers. So, which are the producers of pond ecosystem? The producers of pond ecosystem includes the pond flora, and they are collectively called as hydrophytes. Generally, the hydrophytes, they come under two groups. They are microphytes and macrophytes. Microphytes consist of small size producers like floating phytoplanktons. So, which are the examples for phytoplanktons? Examples of phytoplanktons includes blue-green algae, filamentous green algae and diatoms. They are most numerous and they form the most prominent producers of the pond ecosystem. Other examples includes Anabaena, Oscillatoria and Volvox. These are some of the examples. So, the producers of pond ecosystem are collectively called as hydrophytes, and these hydrophytes can be microphyte or macrophyte. So, microphytes are small size producers or very small green plants like algae and diatoms, whereas macrophytes includes large type of hydrophytes such as rooted hydrophytes, submerged hydrophytes, rooted and emergent hydrophytes, rooted and floating hydrophytes, free floating hydrophytes, etc. These are some of the examples of macrophytes. So, macrophytes are the hydrophytes. These are very large sized plants. These producers, they produce their own food through photosynthesis. So that is why they are termed as producers. So the producers form a very important category of the biotic component. So producers are thus the autotrophic elements. Autotrophic elements means we discussed about it, green plants. They use radiant energy of sun in photosynthesis process, and carbon dioxide is assimilated, and we all know that light energy is converted into chemical energy, and this chemical energy is locked up in the energy rich carbon compounds, and oxygen is also evolved as a byproduct in the photosynthesis. So producers are those green plants that prepare their own food materials by the process of photosynthesis, and they forms a very important group of biotic component of pond ecosystem. The second category of biotic components are the consumers. Consumers are organisms that obtain energy by consuming other organisms. In a pond ecosystem, there are basically two types or two major groups of consumers. They are herbivores and carnivores. Herbivores are also called as primary consumers. They includes small organisms like insect larvae, tadpoles, snails, zooplanktons, crustaceans, small fish. All these are examples of primary consumers or herbivores. And the primary consumers are eaten by secondary consumers. Okay, secondary consumers form the primary carnivores. So, carnivores can be of different grades. They can be primary, secondary and tertiary. Primary carnivores forms the secondary consumers. Secondary carnivores forms the tertiary consumers. These secondary carnivores are tertiary consumers are eaten by the higher predators like tertiary carnivores, which forms the quaternary consumers. So what are the examples for primary consumers or primary carnivores in a pond ecosystem? The primary carnivores includes nematodes, crustaceans, small insects and small predatory fishes. So these primary carnivores are eaten by the secondary carnivores, and the secondary carnivores includes large predatory fishes, frogs and large organisms that eat the secondary consumers. So they form the tertiary consumers or the secondary carnivores. So don't get confused. The primary carnivores are eaten by the secondary carnivores. The secondary carnivores are eaten by the tertiary carnivores, and the primary carnivores are also called as secondary consumers. The secondary carnivores are also known as tertiary consumers, and the tertiary carnivores are called as quaternary consumers. Generally in a large pond ecosystem, the tertiary carnivores or quaternary consumers includes large snakes. Now the last category of the biotic components, these are the reducers or decomposers. So what are decomposers? Decomposers are organisms that break down dead organic matter like bacteria or fungi. These are examples for decomposers, and they are also known as micro consumers. So examples for decomposers includes bacteria, some fungi and flagellated protozoans. So they bring about the decomposition of dead matter or dead organic material, thereby releasing mineral nutrients. So some of the decomposition products will be absorbed by the decomposers as their nutrients, and the remaining portion will be transformed into absorbable products by the transformer. So these products are generally absorbed by primary producers. So these are the last category of the biotic components. So the biotic components of a pond ecosystem consist of producers, consumers and decomposers. So these are the three types of biotic components of a pond ecosystem. Now we'll discuss about the adaptations of the pond biota. Generally, in a pond ecosystem, the organisms, the plants and animals are highly adapted for a life in stagnant freshwater habitat. So what are the common adaptations? In the case of plants, the roots are commonly, generally they are absent or they are poorly developed. For example, in the case of hydrilla, roots are formed but they are poorly developed, whereas in the case of floating hydrophytes like Wolffia, roots are totally absent, and in some forms you can find root pockets in the case of floating forms. So at the root tips you can find root pockets in floating forms. Root hairs are generally absent or they are poorly developed in many of the hydrophytes. Like in the case of root, in stems also you can find a lot of adaptations. Generally for hydrophytes, the stems are long, slender, soft, spongy, and sometimes you can find very short, thick and spongy stem with extensive parenchyma. This helps in floating forms, or this parenchyma increases the buoyancy and helps in the transport and diffusion of oxygen. So in leaves also you can find adaptations like long leaves can be seen, thin leaves. Commonly you can find ribbon shaped leaves in submerged forms to reduce the resistance against waves, and in many hydrophytes, especially in the case of floating forms like Eichhornia, the petioles are inflated. So this again helps the plant to float on water surface, and in some submerged plants the leaves and stem are coated by a mucilaginous coating. This is generally mucilaginous coating can be seen in submerged plant. It helps or it prevents the decaying of the plant. And stomata are generally restricted to the upper epidermis in the case of floating plants, and in emergent forms also you can find stomatal towards the upper epidermis. The stomata helps in direct gas exchange with the air. Similarly, vascular tissues and mechanical tissues, vascular bundles and mechanical tissues are poorly developed and cuticle is generally absent. So, the absorbing organs and tissues are poorly developed with reduced vascular bundles, but you can find presence of air cavities or parenchyma cells or parenchyma tissues extensively, it can be seen extensively in hydrophytes. The consumers of the pond ecosystem also shows various adaptations like small size, shorter lifespan, then presence of highly modified gills in some cases. This helps in aquatic respiration, and in some animals accessory respiratory organs can be seen for air breathing. All the non-living components of a pond ecosystems are collectively called as abiotic components. The abiotic components includes the physical factors and the chemical characteristics of a pond ecosystem. Generally, the physical and chemical characteristics of a pond ecosystems are almost constant. The physical factors includes climatic and edaphic conditions. So the physical factors are again divided into climatic factors and edaphic factors. So what are the climatic conditions or climatic factors? The climatic factors include solar radiations with its heat, light, temperature, rainfall. All these are examples for climatic conditions. And the edaphic conditions includes the nature of the pond bottom. The pond bottom may be muddy or it may be sandy with rich organic components. So all these includes or all this come under the edaphic condition. So like the physical factors, the chemical factors are in turn divided into inorganic and organic compounds. So the inorganic compounds, the most important inorganic compounds includes water, calcium salts, nitrates and phosphates. The important organic compounds includes carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, amino acids, etc. The concentration of dissolved carbon dioxide is generally inversely proportional to the rate of photosynthesis, and that of the dissolved oxygen is directly proportional to the photosynthetic rate. And this dissolved oxygen in the water is crucial for the respiration of aquatic organisms. So the primary medium for life in a pond ecosystem is the water. It is because it is this water that provides habitat and support all the chemical processes that occur in a pond ecosystem.